Hi there everyone, Lars here with another Writer's Rant, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And today I want to rant about how good the relationship is between Callum and Rayla from the Dragon Prince series. And I also want to have a quick look at what the pros and cons are of dropping important little story bits, little excerpts of your story between larger installments of the overall narrative. I know it's a whole lot to cover, so let's just dive right on into it. I'm going to say this right off the bat. The relationship between Callum and Rayla in The Dragon Prince is one of the best romances in current fiction. I really do mean that. There are few that I've come across that can compare or that supersede Callum and Rayla. It is honestly one of the best. Now, I'm not going to get too much into spoiler territory with this right here because I do want people who haven't watched The Dragon Prince to go and enjoy it for yourself. Seriously, go ahead and do that, because I am going to drop some spoilers right here. The letter that I'm going to read here in just a moment is a pretty massive spoiler, but that's just kind of comes with the territory when you're talking about a relationship. But one of the things that I absolutely love about how this relationship is written is that it's not just simply from enemies to lovers, but it actually goes from enemies first to best friends. And that is something really, really incredible right there, because the circumstances that arise with Rayla coming on in to help assassinate the King of Katalis, and she meeting Callum, then figuring out that Viren has the egg of the Dragon Prince, and then going on a quest to return the Dragon Prince to his mother in hopes of preventing a war. There's a whole lot that's going on. These two do not trust each other whatsoever, and yet over the course of their quest, they must learn to work together. They must learn to communicate, which is something very important, because a whole lot of relationships in modern fiction don't really have that. They learn to communicate in order to survive. And through the process of communication, they learn to trust each other. They also learn to bring down their personal walls and just let themselves be themselves. And it's super sweet. It's really well done. It's one of the slow burn parts of the show, but it pays off so well. And the fact that they decided to have them get together before the show even ends was really awesome, because then we got to see what they're like when they're actually in a solid relationship. And I'm also just going to say this. When I first began watching The Dragon Prince, I actually totally shipped Callum with Claudia in season 1. I was like, that's where it's at. I am the long shot shipper in Camille's Harem. If I think that that couple probably won't get together, that's usually what draws me to that ship. It's kind of weird, I know. But the crazy thing is that I was won over as a shipper to the real OTP of the series because the writing was so dang good. And as a quick side note, if you haven't checked out already, we got the entire harem together to actually do a recording of our 10 commandments of shipping with a thanks to the 10 commandments of shipping. If all fans were to actually follow what we have in that podcast episode, there would be no more shipping wars. So seriously, go check it out. And also go check out The Dragon Prince, not just for the relationships, but it's such a great story. So yeah, I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit right here, but the relationship between Callum and Rayla is so well written. And I was reminded of that recently when I read one of the excerpts from the story that was dropped in the advertising campaign leading up to season 4, which is going to be amazing, or at least I hope it's going to be amazing, because they've set up so many incredible things, so many dark twists and turns, and a fantastic villain to take the lead in season 4. I'm really, really excited. So of course the showrunners and their crew are right now in full advertising mode, getting the hype train going, dropping all of these little goodies, clips from the show, as well as little story excerpts to drum up anticipation and hype before the newest season is released. And this letter from Rayla to Callum is one of those promotional pieces, and it kind of helps put into context where Callum and Rayla are with their relationship at the beginning of season 4, because as a lot of fans noticed, Rayla is missing from the picture. Now then, I am not going to provide any more context than that to this letter, which I'm going to read, and I want its writing to stand for itself. And what I want you, dear viewers and listeners, to do is this. I want you to please put into the comment section down below what you thought of this letter that I am going to read. If you know nothing about the Dragon Prince, I want you to communicate what you think of their relationship just based off of the way that Rayla speaks to Callum through this letter. And no, I'm not going to attempt reading it in Rayla's voice because I'm not that good of a voice actor, and that would sound really bad. So, without any further ado, let's dive into Rayla's letter to Callum. Dear Callum, it was the deepest part of night when I first sat down to write this letter. The moon was still high in the sky, and it was shining so brightly through the window that I could count the threads in my blanket. I thought it would be hours before you fell asleep, but I heard your adorable little snores, and I could get up and write this letter. But I guess risking certain death to save my life, again, kind of tires you out. I'm pretty sure you were dreaming as soon as you hit the pillow, and then it was just me and the moon and this blank piece of paper. Instead of writing, I spent most of the night looking at your face and trying not to cry. The moon is setting now, and the sky is getting lighter. It's the hour Runan called the Assassin's Warning, when the protection of night is ending and it's time to return home. But I haven't left. I'm still here, still writing this, and if I stay much longer, you'll wake up and try to stop me from doing what I know I have to do. Leaving. But I can't let you stop me, Callum, no matter how much I want to. I have to be strong, no matter what. And if you said even one word to me, I couldn't be. If I stay even until your eyes open and you yawn your silly morning yawn, I'll break. I'll still be here when the sun rises today, and the next day, and the next. I should go. I have to go. You're smiling in your sleep, Callum. You look so cute when you do that. I hope that maybe it's because you're dreaming of me, and maybe I told you a dream joke that you'll remember even when you wake up. That can be my first gift to you. I know you'll have other gifts today to celebrate your 15th birthday. Luann will make a delicious grub cake. Well, it'll at least look delicious. Ezrin is going to sing you the Katalis birthday song. He promised to teach me, but I won't have time to learn it now. I'll even bet that Bait will give you an extra happy grunt before he goes back to being his usual grumpy self. I wish I could stay and eat fake cake and sing songs with you. I wish I could show you the moon shadow birthday dance and kiss you one more time. Ha! So much for not crying. I'm getting tears all over the page. Okay, trying to wipe them away is making it worse and the words are getting smudgy. I hope you can still read this. I've got one more gift for you, Callum. It's not cake or kisses, but it's something more important than that. I'm going to keep you safe. I have to. I love you too much not to. I still don't understand what I saw in the moon nexus, but I know what it means. I know it in my bones. Viren is alive, Callum, and I'm going to search for him. Alone. I'm sorry. I know I said we would go and find him together, but that was a lie. I think Luann was right about white lies. They're an illusion you build with your words to protect the ones you love. Please don't hate me when that illusion fades, Callum. I know that this will hurt you, and I know they'll be angry with me. But don't hate me. I remember how I felt when my parents left me to join the Dragon Guard. Like, part of my heart was missing, and I would never feel right again. I thought I hated them when they did that to me. In the beginning, it felt so big and terrible, like raging despair, but over time, it became a soft, sweet ache, a reminder of that missing part of my heart. Runan and Athari told me something that helped me understand. Well, a lot of things, really. They said that sometimes we make sacrifices so that the ones we love don't have to. It's part of protecting them, part of protecting you. Taking on hard choices and going to the dark places is an act of love. It's a gift. So please, let me give you this gift, Callum. Stay safe and stay in the light. Don't follow me and don't look for me. I don't think you'll find me anyway. You're starting to stir, and the moon is almost gone. I have to go, but the sky is the strangest color. Purple and gray and gold all mixed together, like there's a storm wrapped around the sunrise. I'm not describing it right. It sounds awful, but it's beautiful. I hope it's still that color when you wake up. I hope you see it before you see this letter. And now you're drooling on the pillow, and even that is cute. Oh, Callum. I have to go. I have to. I want to give you one last kiss, but I can't risk waking you up. I have to go. I love you. I wish I could say that we will see each other again, but I don't know if we will. I hope so. Maybe then we can share some of Barrios's best cake. Maybe then I can give you that kiss. I will think of you under every full moon. Please don't let this hurt too much. But if it does, if you feel that soft aching, know that that piece of your heart isn't missing. It's not missing at all, Callum. I'm carrying it with me. Always. I love you. I love you so much. Rayla. So that's it. That's the letter. And again, I want you to, especially if you haven't seen The Dragon Prince, I want you to comment down below about your insights into their relationship just based off of this letter. And as someone who has watched the show and everything, there's so much that I see going on here in this letter. They did a fantastic job of capturing a lot of Rayla's mannerisms of how she speaks. A lot of times kind of like in half sentences. She makes really weird observations and kind of like slams words together. We're getting a lot of Rayla-isms in this letter. So her voice, to someone who has watched the show, comes through very clearly. And I love that there's still this sense of just being Twitter-pated in this letter. It goes to show that, yeah, this is taking place kind of just after the end to season 3, which is really kind of tragic, especially as we look forward into season 4, because yeesh, some time has passed and Rayla left pretty quickly. So they're still very much in their Twitter-pated stage when Rayla leaves, which makes this even all the more heartbreaking, especially for teenagers. So there's a lot going on here with just this letter. And once again, this is just incredible right here. I try to write my own romances in a realistic way. I have seen a lot of relationships both succeed and fail. Tried my own stab at relationships. I've definitely been on the failing end more often than not. And so I try to take those kinds of elements and put it there into my writing. But every now and then it's nice to just kind of seep a little bit more into the lovey-doveyness and just really capture the soul of what we want romance to be. And that's something I definitely see here. So at least my opinion is that this little excerpt is awesome. It definitely holds true to Rayla's character. It helps give a little bit more insight again into the relationship between her and Callum, which, man, because I just love this, I love this ship so much, it works really, really well. Now then, what I do want to kind of discuss right here, I've ranted about like how this is awesome and I really enjoy it, but now then, let's actually talk meat and bones right here. And I'm not talking about how to write great romance, but rather advertising. Because that's really what this is. It's a form of advertising and storytelling at the same time. They just gave us, the fans of The Dragon Prince, some pretty intense lore right here, at least a really intense insight into what is happening with the characters before season 4 begins. We're getting some story right here. Now then, this is where things get a little bit complicated, because let's say that I'm a casual viewer of The Dragon Prince. I watched seasons 1 through 3. I really enjoyed them. I heard season 4 is coming out. I know the date when it's premiering, and so I'm going to watch it that first day, or maybe that first week. But I'm not really paying attention to any of the promotional material that's dropping. Well, the promotional material that's dropping is telling us about all these different relationships. It's telling us about the culture of the elves in some cases. It's telling us about world-building events and what the villains are getting up to. There's a lot of things that are being dropped that might not necessarily be in the show. Now then, this might not be a problem if the show addresses all of these things that are being dropped right now in the advertising. However, if the show doesn't address it, the show itself will then have to give a very strong installment to its overall story without telling the audience that hasn't seen the promotional material what's going on. This is where things can get a little bit tricky and weird, because those who are coming into the newest season will have the benefit of all this extra storytelling material, or all this extra story material, while the rest won't. and it will create a completely different immersive experience. Now then, this won't be a problem whatsoever if Season 4 is very well written from beginning to end, tells a complete story that builds up on just what people know from Season 3. If Season 4 can do that, it will be a triumph, the fans will enjoy it, everyone will continue on and enjoy the story. If, however, it's relying on chunks of information that the showrunners expected you to have consumed between Seasons 3 and 4, this is where the narrative can kind of start coming off the rails a little bit and maybe detract somewhat from your ability to enjoy the story. Now, there are actually some comparisons that I can give to this right here. One of the big ones actually is Brandon Sanderson and his Cosmere books. Brandon Sanderson has written dozens of novels and stories by this point, and a lot of them are interconnected in his fantasy universe, the Cosmere. And Brandon Sanderson is a genius when it comes to world building. He has all of these different things going on, and there's lots of characters who have little side stories that he doesn't actually put into the story, but he has them written out somewhere, and when people ask him questions about, well, what certain characters are doing and so forth, he sometimes answers them and he gives them that context. In the fan base, we call these the words of Brandon. This is when Brandon Sanderson just drops a whole bunch of lore bombs that you might not get in the books at all, and it's just like, that's there for you to enjoy, and you can use that to better contextualize what is happening in your story. It's a really neat idea, and I'll say this, at the beginning of when Brandon Sanderson was really getting started with Words of Brandon, I was like, yes, tell me everything, Brandon, tell me everything, Brandon Sanderson senpai, I want to know more about your crazy universe. However, this has led actually to a bit of a detriment within the Brandon Sanderson fanbase, or the Cosmere fanbase, and that is you have these people who just consume the words of Brandon and they basically read them and memorize them like scripture. And so then when you have the more casual fans who just enjoy the books, coming online or coming to conventions and talking with others, and they want to share their theories or their insights, you then have these people who consume the words of Brandon, and they come, and I've seen this multiple times, they just slap these poor people around and be like, no, you're wrong, because Brandon Sanderson said 2 years ago and 3 months and 4 days in this Words of Brandon right here, he said this, and that completely disproves your theory. Ha, you're stupid. Read the books. And I mean, that kind of does come down to a matter of toxic fans right there. But Brandon Sanderson has dropped so much information outside of the books that at this rate right here, if you want to actually fully enjoy some of the larger stories, you've had to have listened to or have read his Words of Brandon, and if you haven't done that, you're missing vast amounts of context. And I've definitely gotten into my own fair share of arguments with others because I just happen not to know certain Words of Brandon, and then when I was like, you know what, in this story, and everyone's like, no, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And it does have a detrimental effect on your enjoyment of reading the next book, because you kind of feel a little bit like an idiot, and you feel like you've missed out on stuff. And that can be, yeah, it's just bad. Another problem that I've seen is when you have a creator like Tite Kubo, who rushed his ending to Bleach. Because he did that, because he rushed the ending to Bleach, there's so many loose threads that are left all over the place. And so he hired basically a ghostwriter to wrap up everything for him and let everyone know where all of his characters ended up going. For one thing, the people that I've met who've actually read those books, most of them have said it was completely unfulfilling to read all of those stories. And so many people didn't read them because they were still angry about the way that Bleach ended. So as a result, Kubo went through the effort of hiring this guy and spending a whole bunch of time wrapping up loose threads that he should have wrapped up himself in the manga to create a book series that few people bought and fewer people enjoyed. And so there are answers to actually what happened at the end of Bleach, but the audience didn't care. So yeah, that's also, again, a problem. However, where one franchise actually used the little tidbits of information that they dropped before the next big installment, and it did really well, is Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And I'm not talking about the CGI series. I'm actually talking about the animated Clone Wars. Those were dropped as kind of like an opening salvo for the fans, and the people who watched them absolutely enjoyed them. In fact, it raised expectations for the Revenge of the Sith to astronomical proportions. And there was actually some people who were really upset, for instance, that General Grievous wasn't murdering like a dozen Jedi the moment he showed up on screen, because that was how he was introduced in the cartoon. So while it might have while it might have been a little bit detrimental to some of the fans who were hoping to see some really crazy stuff in episode 3, it was a great way of getting a lot of people geared up and hyped up to see this massive Star Wars movie with tons of fighting, tons of battles, and great drama. But not only that, it inspired so much creativity on the part of other creators in Hollywood that they actually wanted to go back and embellish this short little cartoon excerpt and deliver a full story of the Clone Wars, which has led to some of the best stuff that has come for recent Star Wars material. So this is an example, actually, of when dropping a little bit of goodies before the next big installment can actually be really good in the long run. And I know this is kind of like a, well, for novice writers, what can we honestly take away from this right here? Not everyone is looking to write a massive series. Again, I come back to the matter of advertising. If you are someone who wishes to make money, or at least gain online fame through your story, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn how to advertise. And sometimes you're going to use clips and excerpts from your story, and you're going to throw it on out there to try to hook people in to read the rest. But sometimes it can actually be really interesting, and there's quite a few creators who have done this, where they give kind of a prologue bit to their prospective audience. And they're like, and I have a whole story that builds up on that. If you want to know what happens next, you want to read my book. Or they will have a special scene that is not in the book that they will then use to help advertise the rest of the story. Brandon Mole has done this a couple of times, and oh, they're so cool. You're just like, wow, what's going on here in the story? It sounds intense. I want to read the rest of it. He did that for Beyonders, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. So there are creators who have done this, where they have given little excerpts, little lore dumps, little bits of the story that have gotten people especially hyped. And actually, just another example of this, we saw this recently with Toby Fox releasing yet more lore info and actually some really great background information that helps to put into context the relationship between Chris and Susie. So there's some really great examples of creators who have done these little lore dumps, these little story dumps, these little exposés in the middle of installments or leading up to their story that have paid off really well, while others not so much. So it's something that you're going to have to consider for yourself, what you really want to do. My advice is this: if you're going to go this route, my best advice would be less is more. You want to take the best little clips possible and throw that out there to hook your audience and prepare them for the big story, whether that be just one novel or maybe the next story within your larger series. Less is more. One good hook, pull them in, get the hype train going, and then give them the rest of the story. If you give them too much, then you end up with a Words of Brandon kind of situation, or if you try to use this as a way of wrapping up an incomplete story, then it's unfulfilling, because we want to see that in the larger context. We want to see that in the larger story, because that's where the real emotional payoff is. These little blips are just there to drum up that hype and get people going for your story. Alright, I think I've said enough that can be said on this particular subject, so I'm just going to sign off here by saying, if you haven't watched Dragon Prince already, please go watch it. Binge it on Netflix and get ready for the next season, because it's going to be awesome. And you can check out some of the other stories that I mentioned here: Deltarune, Bleach, Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, Beyonders, all of them Star Wars. If you haven't watched Star Wars, gotta get on that. At least the original trilogy. All of them great stories. And if you're looking for other great stories, I've got links to some of my books down in the description below. We also have links in the description for our podcast, Camille's Harem, as well to other sources that you can use to help benefit your writing as novice writers. And I just want to say thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.